Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. If you are new here, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you on. And if you are regular, thank you so much for tuning in. It's January. We are almost reaching the end of the longest year in a month. It's been so great so far. I hope you are settling into this new year of 2024. A reminder that if you want to be on the show or you know someone who should be on the show, make sure that you reach out to us on our social media platforms, or you send an email at therootofthesciencepod@gmail.com. And if you think there is room for us to collaborate, also send through a message in the following ways that I just explained. Now, let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Johnmark Ochieng. He is a journalist and a space science communicator. Johnmark is also a corporate communications officer at Kenya Space Agency. In this episode, he will help us understand all about space science communication. What are the challenges? What are some of the opportunities? And of course, why does he even do space science communication? So let's tune in to hear all about this and so much more. Let's go. Hello, Johnmark. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Anne. Thank you so much. I am very excited to be here today.
It is such a pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm so excited to, talk to you and for the listeners to know more about you. So first things first, can you briefly introduce yourself for the listeners out there?
Thank you. My name is Johnmark Ochieng. I am a science communicator from Kenya. I am based in Nairobi, and currently I am a corporate communications officer with the Kenya Space Agency. So there's really so much that I could say about myself, but maybe as we get to interact in the podcast or in this episode, you'll be able to get to know more about me. So that is just my brief introduction in a nutshell.
Perfect. Yes, we'll definitely get to know more about you. So you mentioned already that you are a science communicator. More specifically within the astronomy and space field, right? Astronomy
Yes.
and science communication.
Yeah.
So, take me to the beginning. How did this come about? Why astronomy and why space? How did that happen?
Well, I'd say that now we are getting into our time machine and going back in time, but then we both know that that hasn't been invented yet.
Yes.
Yeah, but this all started back when I was young, probably in primary school. And I used to wonder about the little stars, and then the most significant memory I have is when I was walking, whenever I was sent to the shop at night. I was walking, and then the thought that was lingering on my mind is, why is the moon following me? So it's an illusion. I came to realize that it's an illusion. I felt like it was following me everywhere I go, and anytime I ran at the time, I could also see it moving faster. So I was like, how does this happen?
Yeah.
And my mom was a primary school teacher, and in the school where she was teaching art, they used to get these book donations from abroad. So they were these giant discovery books that had a lot of information basically on different aspects of science and history and a wide range of topics, but I was more curious about the science part. So I used to go through the books at the time. Of course, I wasn't smart enough to comprehend what they were talking about in the books, but I could decipher what the pictures were. And at this one time, I came across a picture of NASA's space shuttle, the space shuttle program that contributed to the Hubble Space Telescope being deployed into space. So now this idea of a rocket now sort of broadened my horizon, and I wanted to know, how does this work, or what happens in the outside universe? I mean, you can stare at the night sky and just see darkness, but then when you really think about it, there's a whole other universe out there waiting to be explored, and that's what I decided to now focus on. It wasn't really so intricate at the time, but the interest grew with time the more I was learning.
Wonderful. That's amazing. I love the story about the moon. I'm sure we've all had that. Okay, so that was where your interest started, and thank goodness that your mom, being the teacher, you were able to have access to these types of books that further enabled your curiosity. So,
Yes.
in your introduction, you mentioned that you're a corporate communications officer, and with a specific focus on space science. So, how do you tailor when you communicate? How do you tailor your message to engage a very wide audience? I mean, initially you telling me the beginning of your story, I can already see how you do it, but to make someone who's not interested in science or not interested in space go like, okay, I want to listen.
Okay, so the first thing that I usually do, or basically anyone who knows how to communicate with people, is to understand my audience, and that goes by knowing where they are from, the kind of, or the level of education that they have. So this one helps me, doing this helps me tailor the message towards that specific audience. So if I'm talking to different experts in the field, I wouldn't be shy about using the technical jargon. But if I'm talking to any citizen, we call them local mwananchi or mwananchi here in Kenya, then I'd have to tailor that in a layman's language that they can understand. And it also changes when I'm talking to kids and young ones. And these are the wide majority that I have interacted with in different outreach programs. So in all these, I try to incorporate analogies. So analogies like I can use a donut to describe a black hole. Or I can use the process of, so it said when a black hole swallows something, it's basically a high point of gravity in space, where if anything passes the boundary, which is called the event horizon, it can't come out. Not even light can escape it. So that whole process is called spaghettification. So it's the process of being stretched as you're pulled into the intense gravity of the black hole. Now, to an analogy that I love to use in any setting whatsoever is, you imagine your mouth is a black hole, and when you're eating pasta or spaghetti, now that whole process of you eating or taking in the spaghetti is now spaghettification, and that is what happens when you're swallowed by a black hole. So analogies like this make science more relatable, and someone wouldn't really feel left out if you're talking about it in a conversation or in a certain setting.
Oh man, I love that. Yeah. It makes it exciting and it makes it more relatable, because I know what spaghetti is. I know what a donut is, I know what my mouth is. And I love that you really have to know your audience. And even as you're explaining, and I'm sure as everybody else who's listening, we can tell your communication skills are innate to you. It comes out naturally. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. Do you mind sharing some of like one or so, if you can choose one, but off the top of your head, what has been one moment, one special moment that had you go like, like it also kind of, you learned something while you were trying to teach something, or just any special moment that sort of stands out while you're doing some of your science engagement initiatives at schools or even with corporate and more the technical people. Do you have one?
Yes, I do have one, and it's a very interesting, I should call it a story, because on top of being a science communicator, I'm also an avid sky watcher. So I love to, any opportunity I get where there are dark and clear skies, I love to go out and just wonder and think about my whole existence in the entire universe. So there was this one time, and I have this calendar where I can go and see when there are significant astronomical events that are happening. So there was this one time during our meteor shower. I was out, and for you to catch a glimpse of these meteors, you need to stay out and sort of camp, and usually they peak from around 12 midnight to 6 a.m. thereabout. So this one time I was out there trying to see if I can catch the Geminids meteor shower. It originates from the Gemini constellation. So all these are terms that I usually love breaking down when I'm talking to someone about them. So on this particular night, as I was trying to trace where I would probably see a meteor coming from, I saw this bright light. It was very bright, very fast, and it roared through the sky. And that moment, I have never forgotten about it. In fact, anytime I go back home and I look at that side of the sky, I still remember how that felt or how that made me feel at the time. So I find that anytime we go on different engagements, different outreach programs, or even when I'm talking to just a random person, like maybe a cab driver, they also tell me about this thing they saw that they thought was an UFO, an unidentified flying object. So now, whenever that happens or whenever I get that response, it's usually an aha moment, because now I'm like, this is a teachable moment. This is the right time to break this conception that people have about certain objects that we see in the night sky. So during these experiences, now I get a chance to educate them and tell them that that was not an UFO. And I explain what they were and how many times they happen in a year, or what time they peak, and what the best time to see them is. And you find that after I've done that, so many people relate to that, and they actually say how they felt at that time. So it even gives it more meaning when now they know what it was, and it makes them feel more connected to the universe. So those are usually one of my favorite moments whenever I'm communicating or whenever I'm talking to someone about space and astronomy.
Yeah, amazing. I love how, like you say, that you're able to have teachable moments even in the most normal day activities, whether you are going on about your day. So that's pretty amazing. So I just wanted to find out, you from Kenya. When you think of science communication, how is science communication, like, is it popular in Kenya?
I wouldn't say that it's popular. There are a few people who do science communication, or some who do it, but they don't really identify as science communicators. So we are in that stage where we are trying to, now I, together with other science communicators that are in the country right now, we are trying to make it popular. We are breaking the bias that science is a difficult concept to comprehend or understand. And that really goes a long way. So I wouldn't say that there are challenges that are involved in science communication in Kenya. What I see are opportunities, and these are opportunities to break that bias that people have against science, and just let them know that it can be exciting, it can be fun, and it can be consumed just like any other news or information that exists out there.
Oh, yes, definitely. I am of course, biased to that as well, as I'm a science communicator myself. So I love that you and the other science communicators are also pushing that agenda. So, Johnmark, away from what you do in your work life, you mentioned already that you're an avid sky watcher, but you also have like really interesting hobbies, like hiking, sports bikes, etc. So, do you find like when you are out there hiking or you are doing your other hobbies that these activities might sort of intersect on how you convey some of your work, like your communications works? Do you have moments where you're able to link the two some way, somehow?
I actually do have some of ways that I link the two. So almost all the hobbies that I enjoy are linked to adrenaline. I constantly love living on the dangerous side of life. And this is not an encouragement to our listeners to also start living on the dangerous side. Yeah, but I do find that these moments provide me a sense of clarity. I get to improve my productivity, especially after I go on a hike or a morning run, or basically anything that involves my adrenaline peaking. So it goes well in developing now my productivity, especially when I'm at work. I know I say that already, but when I'm at work now, it improves the productivity. And how the two link with space science and communication is that I sort of get to have those alone moments where you get to comprehend about life a lot. So I start by thinking about what it is that I have on my plate, how I want to package it, and how I would also make someone else understand. So basically what I'm trying to say is, in those lonesome moments when I'm out there in the wild or in the woods, I get to find the time and the space to put myself into another person's shoes and see, if I read this written or if I listen to this said by Johnmark, would I really understand it? So that also gives me the clarity on what I aim to achieve whenever I'm communicating.
Amazing. Sometimes inspiration does come from the most unlikeliest places, and I love the fact that you combine the two. And maybe somewhere when you're busy explaining about your adrenaline junkie activities, maybe somebody's like, oh, I also love doing that. And just incorporating the two, they might now start paying an ear to listen to the type of work that you are doing. So, Johnmark, you are in the beginning of your career as a science communicator. I'd like to know, where do you see yourself, or like what is the big dream and the big goal for yourself in this space, or even if it extends past this space?
First of all, I'd just like to start by repeating what I said earlier. Here in Kenya and Africa at large, science communication is not really appreciated that much, especially in astronomy and space science. So you find that anytime you talk about space exploration, what comes to your mind is organizations like NASA, the European Space Agency, just to mention a few. But now that goal for me is, how can I make it be like, whenever I say space exploration, someone from South Africa or someone from Kenya or someone from Egypt says, you know what, here in Africa we have done this to contribute towards achieving some milestones in space exploration, and we are proud of that. So I like a slogan of a company that I used to work for, and it's Africans in space for Africans by Africans. So that is the stepping stone for all that I aim to achieve. I want to be able to inspire many people all over Africa and the world to take pride in us exploring the universe, us understanding the universe. And I really love what Carl Sagan said. We are made of star stuff. So that is a quote I really love using most of the time, because it really shows how much we are connected. So the ultimate goal is to see this becoming a norm and breaking that misconception that space and astronomy is an idea of the Western world, or it is an idea of the West. Why can't we say Kenya recently launched a satellite to space? Now, how can I make that be a source of pride for people here in Kenya? And of course, that extends to other countries in Africa and different milestones that are achieved by different organizations in Africa and out of Africa.
I love this dream, and I'm in supportive of this dream. And you're absolutely right. Africa is doing some really amazing work, and I think it's up to us as Africans to amplify that work, so that, like you said, when you think of astronomy, you don't only think of the global north. You think of Africa, you think of Kenya, you think of South Africa as well. They've also big in that space as well. So I think it's so important, and I look forward to you achieving this, because it starts like a little dream right now, us having this conversation. But when you get there, I'm going to have you back on the show, and I'm going to be like, listen, remember what you said? Here you are.
Very true. And that is actually the whole idea. And I want to be the kind of science communicator who inspires hope in people. I want to inspire that little boy in a local community in Kenya to say that one day I also want to be a science communicator and talk about this. I talk about biology, talk about chemistry, or just talk about something that I love in a way that people will relate to.
Oh man, I'm inspired, and I hope somebody else is inspired. And it's been so lovely chatting to you, Johnmark, today. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much, and for the opportunity to be a guest in your show. I've been going through it, and I absolutely love what you're doing, having different experts and guests talk about things that they love. It's both informative, educative, and it can also transform someone's perception of things that they had different ideas about. So that is really the whole point of what you and I as science communicators are trying to do.
Exactly. You've taken the words right out of my mouth. And thank you so much, Johnmark. I wish you all of the best in everything that you do. And to everybody else who's tuned in, thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.